So hi again. So Alex and Terence, you should know us by now. But we have all seen Rainer and Sam's talk, but Jack here is actually also from Oxford. He graduated last year, I believe, yeah. So he did a degree in education, is currently working at the City University of Hong Kong as an assistant professor. So because I myself actually did this PhD application exercise not long ago, so I myself would feel like maybe I can also talk about more about the process. Yes. So Terence can maybe lead the.
And especially since I'm in my 4th year and my last year of my undergraduate, so I personally have questions to ask as well, and hopefully these are questions that are relevant to everybody here. First off, when we do the PhD application, one thing that stands out that's very different from many other applications that we do is we need to find ourselves a boss who we will stick to for the next 3 or 4 years. And that is something that is very unique among all the other applications, be it on work or in undergraduate studies. So what are the particular challenges, or what are the tips that you have when it comes to finding a correct or a suitable supervisor as well as the research project?
So to put it in context, as I said, I first did an MPhil and then a PhD. So what I really did with my MPhil time was to get to know the professors and lecturers in my faculty. And that gave me an understanding of the personalities or the way they work. And luckily, I have a very compatible relationship with my own supervisor back in MPhil. And so I continued on with her in PhD.
Hi, I guess I have a different experience because I did my bachelor and master in Hong Kong. So when I first to apply PhD at Oxford, so I just like go to the department, read out the professor research interest, looking at the paper they produce, whether it's something that I want to pursue in the next 3 to 4 years. So I'm very lucky that to identify one professor in the education department who want to do something on English medium instruction, the kind of language challenges students face in different parts of the world. So I have to really get into those names through the publication. So I strongly recommend, if you're interested in pursue your PhD and you have no background before, like you don't know the supervisor, go to read their publication, try to email them, send them some email. Now as a professor, I receive like 10 emails every month. A lot of inquiry from mainland China or other parts of the world. Students do actively engage with their potential supervisors. So don't underestimate yourself. Just write 2 sentences, introduce yourself, what kind of project you want to do in the future, and then engage with the potential supervisors.
Well, indeed, I agree with Jack very much. Reading publication is essential for you to find a supervisor. And I basically have a very different experience compared to Rina and Jack because I didn't do a master's. I finished my bachelor's and I go straight for a PhD. So the way I did that was basically really look at the publications. So basically you get to know what kind of chemistry they're doing and what sort of trends they're trying to go towards to. And that's one critical thing to know. But as for whether you can find a suitable supervisor, I think that could be a really tricky question because you can read their chemistry, but you possibly cannot read their personality. I mean, just by a short meeting, right? So most of the time we figure that out after working with that person. But I mean, it's all about first impression, I guess. If you have a very good first meeting with him, then maybe you sort of feel like, maybe working for this guy is a good decision.
So for me, I mean, I agree with most of the points that were mentioned, and I think especially on the point that, so maybe I can tell you more about myself. So I did my undergrad, master's, and now PhD abroad, but all in different institutes. So I really didn't have a person that I was very comfortable with to start with. So every time was like, when I find my master thesis supervisor, then my PhD potential supervisor, it's like reading them online and then get to know the person. But I think it's very essential to find out what the person is like. Well, of course, the best way is that you can arrange a phone interview. maybe it's not like you were waiting for the professor to invite you for an interview, but rather say, I would like to get to know more about your research. Can we have a quick Skype call, maybe on a Friday afternoon when he's freer? But of course, don't go too far. Like don't try too hard, so to say. But I think it's very important when you speak to the potential supervisor, sort of in person or at least over the phone, because in that way you can find out the expectation that the professor has on you and the other way around. So I can share a quick story. So I was interviewing at a few places, including some places in America. And in America, it's very well known that the professors push the students very hard. And actually, I met with a supervisor. I first emailed the supervisor, and our email correspondence were like very positive. And he says, "Oh, he wants to take me as a student so much." But then when I went on to the Skype with him, he say, "Oh, I expect my students to work 16 hours a day in the lab," and I was like, "Oh my God." So I mean, I'm glad that he actually told me right away what his expectation is. Otherwise, if I did get admitted, I would choose to go to that institute, and then my expectation is unmet, and I'll be in so much agony right now. So yeah, so just use every opportunity to find out what the professor is like, and also from the colleague as well. If you have a chance to get invited to the institute for an interview, don't just talk to the professor, but talk to colleagues, because some professors do ask for input from the group members. I mean, this is especially true for scientists, but ask for input from the group members and see whether this candidate is a suitable person. So apart from bonding with the supervisor, bonding with the colleague is also essential as well.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think another very important aspect is regards funding. And I'm just wondering, what are the funding process that you went through, and what are the opportunities out there in general?
Maybe let me start again so that we can go this way. So me and Sam actually are funded by the same scholarship, the Croucher Scholarship, which also sponsored this symposium you see there. So thanks to them. So there are different scholarships available. So in Hong Kong, there are scholarships available for students who are like Hong Kong citizenship or haven't studied in a Hong Kong university. But different scholarships have different sort of expectation. And in our case, for the Croucher Scholarship, it's really about your scientific aptitude. So you are required to submit a research proposal quite detailed. And actually, for most PhD applications in the UK or in many other places I know, you don't really have to write a very detailed research proposal. So for this particular scholarship, your scientific aptitude is quite important. But for potentially other scholarships that the others might talk about, it might be more about your personality or your contribution to society.
And as for the actual application process, what I did was basically I contacted the supervisor first. Basically, when I applied for a PhD, I did not really look for open positions. What I did was speculative application. So I read their papers, I know what kind of person I want to work with, sort of, and then I send them emails and say, well, I want to try to work in your lab, so what do you think? In a more polite way, of course. And then they would sort of reply, if they're happy to support your application, they would say, yeah, I'm very interested. And then you would further introduce them to the scholarship that you're going to apply, and then to ask them whether we can work together to write a proposal, right? Or if you're really brilliant, you can come up with a proposal yourself. That could be also a possibility, but I think that is quite difficult. So it's more like liaising between two parties to get things done.
So they just mentioned about the science discipline. They may have a supervisor having a project, have some funding to fund a PhD student, or through an organization to provide you funding. In arts, humanities, properly applying PhD is different because once you need to get the offer, so there's one process. And second thing is about the funding. So that will be another process. For some scholarship, like offered by university, is automatically consider during the process, right? In my case, it's different because I got the Swire scholarship. It's entitled for 3-year like full scholarship for the tuition fee and monthly stipend. So it's a very generous scholarship for the PhD student. So which means I don't need to pay $1 at all in my PhD journey. But to get into this kind of full scholarship is very competitive. They're not asking you about what you want to do in your PhD, but looking at you as the whole like human being, like your personality, what you have done before. So why do you want to do this PhD, and what will lead to after your PhD graduation? So they're looking at your personality and what you can offer after the PhD. And then they may have different process. Some of them only require you to write a personal statement and some recommendation letter from professor, but don't only limit to professor, but also you can ask people who was your employers, like mentors. They may give another anecdote or story about your whole personality. That is very crucial when they consider this kind of funding. And also they looking at the aspect of your research, what is the impact? So if you know about research these days, we're looking at the impact of your research. So you need to tell a little bit more story about how your research finding can lead to beyond academia. So I would say that, so this is the roughly about the scholarship that I got. And then there will be other kind of scholarship that offer at different level, maybe a university or department. I think it's very important to know that having a PhD, and then you need to invest 3 to 4 years, there will be a huge financial burden to you and your families. So I would strongly recommend you to consider, you may get small money for different source of funding, but you need to calculate your budget. So because you need to spend money for 4 years and you cannot get a job, or you may have a chance to do part-time job. So you need to calculate whether you can secure at least 1/3 of your money for the first 2 years, and to get a full scholarship after you get into PhD program is impossible. So don't have this assumption that, okay, maybe I'll get small money for the first year, and then second or third year you can apply full scholarship. Then it's not a very direct way to get the funding.
I guess I would just elaborate on the different types of funding. There are 3 types that I could think of. The first type would be directly applying through the university application when you hand in your application to grad school. That one, you would probably have to write a statement. You also need reference letters from your past employers or people you worked with. The second type is something called the studentship. So studentship works in a way where there are some corporate companies or NGOs that collaborate with your faculty. They come up with a project, and if you join the project, it means that you're under this studentship program. For example, in the Faculty of Education, we have a studentship in a Lego project because our faculty works with Lego, the company. And so if you get into that position, your tuition fees should be covered. But one thing is to note that they do have requirements such as sometimes being an European or EU, UK citizen. And the third type is less about the tuition fees. It's more after you get in. So for example, if you need to do field work, you can apply to your faculty. They do give you funding. Also your college, certain colleges would give you a certain amount of fundings if you want to carry out your research elsewhere, or even if you need equipment or tools that you need to pay for. So these 3 might be different from just applying for tuitions.
I guess one other type that I can think, and sort of maybe to conclude this session, is that some PhD studentship is advertised by projects. So there's a website called findaphd.com, and there's also findamasters.com. So basically, for some other university, the supervisor has secured funding for a particular project, and students are recruited on the basis of working on that particular project. So in that case, you might have less flexibility of working on your own things, but if it is if you have a general interest in mind, or if you just have a broad interest in the field, that might be the way to go as well.
Right. Thank you very much. I think that's all for the moment. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask them in our drinking sessions.
So basically we have a drinking session now, so we have already wines and soft drinks outside, and the speakers will be around for until about 7:15, so it's a very good chance for everyone to ask questions. And for those who sign up for dinner, we will leave here about 7:15, but feel free to head there yourself, arrived there about 7:45, and we do have a few spots that are available. So if you're interested in joining a dinner meeting with speakers, and also Professor Dominic Chan will be there as well. And there will be also the director of the Croucher Foundation, which is there. So if you want to know more about the scholarship and just want to eat a good meal in general, so you can contact any of our committee members. So yeah, so last of all, so thanks all for your attendance here today, and hope you learn more about PhD studies in general. And yeah, and hope that this may help you to consider whether you do PhD or not PhD. Thanks very much.